Welcome to our first edition of Chomp Chat, a mental health conversation worth having. On this episode, we introduce you to Dr. Nicole Karsinski, the University of Florida Athletic Department's new Director of Mental Health and Wellness. Kathleen Joseph, a licensed mental health counselor, also joins the show to discuss mental health in sports and how it's becoming more mainstream to openly talk about.
Welcome in, Gators, to another edition of Chomp Chat, a mental health conversation worth having. I'm your host, Dennis, and joining me is Dr. Nicole Karsinski, Director of Mental Health and Wellness here at the Athletic Department, and Kathleen Joseph, a licensed mental health counselor. Gators, welcome in today, and first off, we'll just kind of go around and we'll introduce ourselves, and Dr. Karsinski, why don't you go first?
Good morning. Thanks for having me, Dennis. I am Nicole Karsinski. I am the Director of Mental Health, as you said. I have been at the UAA since January of 2024, so I just celebrated 3 months here, and I'm just figuring out my way. Prior to being here, I was at Student Health Psychiatry on campus for 15 years, where I provided mental health services to both athletes and regular UF students.
And Kathleen, welcome to the show. Just tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of how you got to where you're at today.
Thank you, Dennis. I'm Kathleen Joseph. I am a licensed mental health counselor providing services for individuals in the community. Currently, I am a trauma-informed licensed mental health counselor, which means that I value the impact of trauma on our lives and on our development. I actually worked with the Florida Gators from 2015 to 2020. And in 2020, I took a little bit of a hiatus. I have this joke that I've told Dr. Karsinski. When you work with the Florida Gators, or the good thing about working with the Florida Gators is that you have to run with the Florida Gators. And the bad thing about working with the Florida Gators is that you have to run with the Florida Gators. And so a couple of personal experiences happened to me that necessitated a break. And so I took a little break and reconnected with some folks here, and now I'm back. And so really looking forward to taking my training in trauma-informed care into the service of the Florida Gators.
And we're here today to talk about mental health, specifically in the athletic field. So, Dr. Karsinski, why is this important to talk about and raise awareness?
So I want to give you a little bit of kudos. So I was on the job for about 2 weeks when I was at a meeting, and Dennis approached me and said, "What do you think about doing a podcast?" And I anxiously looked at him and said, "Maybe." And so we kind of put our heads together and talked about what it would be like to have student athlete voices discussing the concept of mental health. And so in order to do that, we thought about a little bit of a plan, and May is Mental Health Awareness Month nationally, or internationally, I think even, and decided that this was going to be the time that we launched the podcast and started having these really important conversations.
And the goal here is to capitalize on the month of May. So we'll release a podcast each week, focusing on different topics throughout the month to just raise awareness and how important it is to talk about mental health and athletics. And Kathleen, just how long have you worked in athletics, and why do you feel like it's important to talk about?
Yeah, so this is my second go again in athletics. It was about 5 years that I worked with the athletes previously. In my experience, this is important because we serve a lot of kids who come from backgrounds who just don't have, where they just weren't given the language, the know-how to know when something is wrong. We know that ages 18 to 25, or that time of early onset of mental illness, about a third of people have onset of depression symptoms, anxiety symptoms. We also know what the pressures of college include. And so what I laid witness to when I was here was students who came in and they were bright and they had a lot of ambition, a lot of power, meet normative struggles without the appropriate tools and support to navigate those struggles. That shouldn't happen. And so I think making the conversation of mental health loud and proud for our athletes is basically a way of taking care of them, giving them the tools to be able to talk about when something goes wrong, because something will go wrong. That's life dishes us challenges. And then finally knowing where to go to get that support that is fundamental to their success.
I think the other part that is important is, from working with elite athletes, recognizing that a huge portion of their identity is rooted in their sport. And so sometimes they don't have the opportunity to fully grow as a person. Some of that development is arrested because they just completely focus in on whatever their athletics is, and their identity is rooted in their performance. And so one of the things that got really excited for me when I started working with athletes, which was way back in 2004 was the first time that I saw an elite athlete, was realizing that they don't always have a good sense of who they are as a person. And it was so exciting to be a part of their lives, to be able to grow a richer form of themselves, so that when athletics was no longer a part of their life, or even as it was still a part of their life, it didn't completely define them.
How difficult is that sometimes to relay that to an athlete, that their entire life that's what they've known, and to be strong and to work their way through things, whether it's off the field or on the field. What are those conversations like for those athletes? You almost probably see it once they kind of recognize that you guys are here to help.
I think it's about normalizing help-seeking behavior. We all need help. I think part of the challenge comes is if my identity, so much of my identity hangs on me being powerful or competent. Sometimes mentally we might sort of put those things on opposite ends of the continuum. Okay, well, I have to be powerful and competent, so I can't be quote unquote weak, which is asking for help. And so being able to break that down for folks, if you get this help, then you're kind of cutting back what this suffering, this challenge looks like. And just really breaking that down really helps them. I think another thing that I want to name is our students are learning. They're developing people. They're growing into adults. And I think this is an opportunity to help them to make that transition into adulthood successfully. Because again, life will dish more challenges, right? Even beyond this place. And so while they have these services and this opportunity, it becomes a wonderful opportunity to say, this is what help-seeking looks like. It's not an indictment against you. You're not weak. And then when that's normalized, then in my experience, the help-seeking happens. It's easy. And in fact, they begin to tell their friends, like, hey, I was going through this issue. Kathleen helped me out. Just get some help and you'll be great.
I think adjacent to that too, it's important for the athlete, for them to know that we see them as people. In working even more specifically since accepting this job, and people, in the community, or you're meeting your kids, parents, or your kids' friends' parents, and they'll say, oh, what do you do for a living? And you give them, the brief, the job title and the description. And oftentimes the answer is, oh, it's so cool. You get to work directly with the athletes. And I have trained myself to reply and respect that and say, it is really cool, but they're humans too. And the look on people's faces when you acknowledge them as just people is, I think, sometimes very shocking. And they don't think of them outside of who they are in that spotlight. And so when new athletes come into me, I don't read anything about them. Like, I may know their name, or if I've talked to a coach or a trainer, or if they've reached out to me before to set the appointment up, I don't go online. I don't read their bio. I don't know anything about them, because I want their story to be their own. I don't need to have any other news outlet tell me who they are as a person. And I think from that first appointment, it's really important that they're the ones that get to tell their story and to identify who they are.
Kathleen, you mentioned one thing that I recognized. You said that this is a lifetime. While they may be here at Florida for a couple of years, they're getting the academics. They'll have the degree on the wall forever. They'll have the Letterman's jacket, that they've competed here at Florida. But really, the tool that you are sharing your knowledge with is just a lifetime of life's not always easy, and you're going to have struggles, and you're also giving them the tools in their toolbox to overcome those adversities.
Absolutely. And at this age, right? Like this is the pivotal point where they're beginning to make independent choices. And so being able to guide our athletes into the choices that will support their mental health over the lifetime, I think we're doing our work then, right? This is an educational institution. And I think part of what it is that we do includes psychoeducation, helping them to understand, how do you know that you're struggling? What's happening with you? Who can you go to? Normalizing that behavior.
Kathleen, to that point, it's become more talked about now, even at the professional level, where our students now probably look up to a lot of the athletes at the next level. And when they see them getting help, how does that trickle down to the college ranks?
I'm always excited when I see a professional athlete talking about their own mental health struggles. It becomes a stage for me, and I kind of go in. It becomes a very conversational way to discuss struggle. And often what I've learned as a practitioner, sometimes when someone is newly coming into the mental health space, it can help to talk about somebody else's story first before you sort of personalize, because personalizing it might feel too vulnerable. You might feel like, gosh, I don't trust you yet. And so being able to connect on, a professional athlete that our student athletes look up to, like, hey, this person, I'm thinking about Michael Phelps, I'm thinking about Kevin Love. This person needs help, and they were not unafraid to say that. It, again, normalizes the discussion.
I think the secondary piece to that too is athletes being able to recognize that these people who have, like a brand are willing to go out into the world and share their story. And if those athletes are comfortable being on this platform and sharing, oftentimes post mental health, I'll use the word crisis, right? Where something has happened and their professional career has maybe experienced a fracture to it because of their mental health, and they've come openly and talked about this. It gives our athletes the opportunity to see perhaps what will happen if they don't attend to what's going on. And so I love also hearing about the after story, right? So we have Michael Phelps, we have Simone Biles, who are going out there and talking about their stories, but then also continuing to share what they're doing to take care of themselves. So it's not just like, I had this crisis, I took care of it, and it's done. They're sharing their stories. They're saying what they're continuing to do. They're willing to talk about the work, like the mental health work that they're continuing to engage in, to be able to stay the best version of themselves.
How do we build upon that to tackle the stigma of not coming forward and being open and vulnerable to say you need help?
I think it's a couple of different ways. I love stories like this. Modeling. Most of my clients in discussion, I'm sharing with folks, this is a time where I struggled and I needed help. I'm not making it about me, but I'm modeling that for them because, again, they're learning. And so if they're able to see, wow, this person with this hat of licensed mental health counselor can really be human for a moment and say, yeah, I've had my personal struggles. Gosh, I remember when I was in my 20s and I had no idea what adulting was about either. It really takes the pressure off. And to Nicole's point previously, our student athletes are under incredible amount of pressure. I think we can go on Facebook after any game and you can see how the fans feel, or any loss, right? And you can see how the fans feel. And so they are aware that folks are looking at them. Their public image, they're public figures, and so their public image matters. There's an incredible amount of tension and pressure. When I'm able to sort of normalize that and say, hey, I have a hat too, but I don't let that hat stop me from getting help, it's just a completely different experience, right? We're meeting each other as two individuals trying to understand and move through this together.
I had an athlete just last week share with me that they were traveling for a game and they were in a room, maybe it was one of their hotel rooms, I'm not sure. And they were having a conversation about, do they think that therapists or mental health professionals see their own mental health professional? And this particular athlete, he was like, oh, I was not afraid to tell them that you guys see a therapist. And I love that. I love that he felt comfortable sharing with them that his therapist, me, have said, of course I've reached out for help. Like, how can I be the best version of myself to help you if I have also not sought individual therapy services? And I love that he felt so comfortable being able to say, oh no, I've actually had this conversation with my own individual therapist, and she has been honest about making sure that she keeps herself well so that then she can provide the services to us. And so that stigma, right, from just that trickle down effect of making sure that we are also seen as the humans that we are. Just because we're the professional in the room doesn't mean that we also don't have some of these same struggles that they're going through.
I love that you said that. One of my biggest kind of fears is that an athlete that I'm serving will think that I'm like bulletproof or something. You know, it's completely, I too have had my experiences with therapists, it's completely disconnecting when you feel like this person that is helping you is like bulletproof and they've never had an issue in the world. It's not real. But when we are able to connect with them and say, you know, even I one of my favorite things before I kind of set folks up to share my experiences, I'm like, I know I got a couple years over you, but this is kind of why I understand this from this perspective. And that humanism helps.
Mm-hmm. I think just creating a culture within our athletic association where seeking mental health services, talking about mental health is just normal. And it doesn't carry a stigma to it where, oh, you have to go because something is wrong, right? I have some new freshmen right now who, as soon as they came on campus, said, I want to start working with somebody, and reached out, and they didn't have anything going on. There wasn't any major stressor for them that they identified outside of becoming a new Florida athlete, which PS is a stressor, but there wasn't like a impetus that was beyond that. And both of them said, I really just want to have someone so that I have you in my back pocket. I know that things are going to get hard as season goes on. And if I have these routine appointments, I know that next week I can come and I can talk about what's going on. And I think it's really important that we have those conversations, that you can come in and talk about what's going on at home. You can talk about how you're struggling in your school, that maybe things with your roommate aren't going well. It doesn't have to be something quote unquote big for you to come in and access mental health services. It's just you trying to work on you.
Where do you see things going from here? I think as you continue to see people here at Florida, that community will continue to grow. Kathleen, I think you either mentioned before we got started or as we got started in the interview, the student athletes share their experiences. Can you talk about just how important that is for the message to continue to spread as we continue to grow the community, and to make sure that it's a safe place to come and talk about what's going on, good or bad?
So our students talk. And I think by modeling the services that we offer, you know, by being engaged, I should say, with our students in a way that's meaningful, meeting them where they are, not pathologizing the process, I think that's an expression of kindness. That's an expression of genuine goodwill. And that's where I think the sharing happens, when folks are feeling safe, when they're feeling comfortable, when they're feeling seen, when they know that you can come and talk about what's happening, and this isn't going to be reported to your coach. This is about helping you. And I think that level of safety, security, comfort, consistency, it really builds. I feel like I'm talking about building a culture. And when we build that culture, folks come. Folks begin to share. This has been my experience. And I think that's what brings other folks in.
I think I feel compelled to piggyback off and talk about the confidentiality piece, because we have this platform. The athlete experience, particularly the elite athlete experience, is such that, like Kathleen said, where they have a game, any kind of performance, good or bad, and they can go on a social media and people will tell them how they did or who they are. And so their performance isn't theirs in some way. Other people sometimes feel ownership over that, to tell them.
They're commoditized, I think.
Yes. And so I'm so intentional about the conversations that I have with athletes at our first appointment, just letting them know this is your safe space. What you say here is not going to go anywhere. And letting them know the boundary of that, of course. Like if you are going to hurt yourself or you're going to hurt someone else or you're at risk of that, then of course it is my job to take care of you. But outside of that, this information is not going to get to your teammate. Even if they see their teammate outside the door, right? They pass each other and they're thinking, oh gosh, I just talked about this teammate and they're walking in the door and seeing me. We have the ability to compartmentalize that and we can see you for you. And so knowing that what they share in that space is kept confidential, their teammate's not going to know, their trainer's not going to know, their coach isn't going to know. And just having that space that's safe is really important for me to share with them.
So now we've kind of covered everything from what is available for a student athlete here at Florida. What is the next step if someone does need or would like to see you?
So the first thing that I want to say is if you're a student athlete and you're listening to this and you're struggling or your teammate's struggling or your roommate's struggling, I want you to know that you don't have to. I want you to know there's a team of professionals that are here to help you. Enduring struggle doesn't make you strong. Finding the resources that can help you will make you powerful. And so I want to kind of really send that message home for any athlete that's listening. And if you want to get in contact with us, there's going to be some contact information available in our show notes. My name is Kathleen Joseph. I can be reached directly at 352-642-6755. You can text me or call me. And then I kind of take care of it from there. All you got to do is just reach out and say, hey, my name is such and such. I'd like to see you.
The other way that you can reach us is the brochures. So everyone's pretty familiar with them. But if you are not, there is a trifold brochure that exists in lots of spaces around the Athletic Association, including training rooms. And almost every trainer, I think, has them in their possession. That's a great way for you to identify. And there's a photo of all of us. So you can see what we look like. You can see our names, our phone number, and our email is on there. And there's also bios. So you'll be able to read about each of us. The areas that we tend to serve, our theoretical orientation, and then from there you can reach out via phone number or email. In the future, coming soon, we are hoping to have an online system for people to be able to log in and to schedule appointments through that. That should be coming here within the next couple of months, and so that will also improve our ability to access services.
And we have a great webpage that we'll be updating, making sure these podcasts are on there, as well as other information to help out student athletes or anyone really looking for help. So, well, it's been great conversation, great to talk about mental health and get it out into the open. I appreciate you joining the show today.
Thanks so much, Dennis.
Thanks for having us, Dennis.
All right, that's going to wrap up this edition of Chomp Chat, a mental health conversation worth having.
Thanks for joining today's first episode of Chomp Chat. If you or someone you know is struggling, help is available. If you are a UF student athlete, you can seek mental health services through UAA Mental Health and Wellness. For everyone else, you can find resources at psychologytoday.com or FindTreatment.gov.